Alright, this is the Motorola Atrix disassembly for lens replacement. Not really my favorite phone. I give it a difficulty of 7 out of 10. If you know what you're doing, it's not too tough, but the first couple of times, a lot of people struggle with this phone. Start by removing the cover from the back and take out your battery, your SIM card, and your memory card if you have one. We're going to have several screws that go around the outside of the case. There are a total of 7 visible screws and 1 hidden one that you'll have to remove down near where the memory card is. So I'll see that in just a second. And these like to stay inside the case also, so I had to kind of pry a couple of them out. You can leave them in the case as long as you don't lose them. Just remember that you've got a total of 8 going in there, if I counted correctly. So right down here in the corner, there's a little rubber flap. You need to peel that back so that you can expose the hidden screw. Make sure you take that one out and keep these in order. I believe we've got a couple different sizes that Motorola uses on this particular phone. And of course, they are not interchangeable. So we're going to start at the bottom of the phone by prying apart this little tab that holds it together. I know you can't really see that in the shot, but if you look at the bottom of your phone, you'll see what I'm talking about right down here around the center piece, center of the bottom there. Just pry that apart until it releases, and then you can go ahead and just go around the edge of the phone using your pry tool, and the rest of it should come apart without too much effort. Be careful around the top where the power button is. It's kind of a funny assembly they have up here with 2 additional little clips that go around the outside of the power button, and we're going to have an antenna wire right here we disconnect, and that will release the back frame. Be very careful with the inside of this phone. It has a lot of little parts that are pretty easy to damage if you aren't careful, including 2 little metal connections at the bottom that must be intact in order for the antenna to work. So this little rubber piece right here around the charging port is the most fun, because when you go to reassemble it, you really have to put in a lot of effort to put it back in. It comes out relatively easy, but you'll see what I mean when you go to put it back together. It's not particularly fun. And then we have a couple of flex cables underneath here we need to release before we can remove the logic board. And these come out real easy. One of them actually has a gate that needs to be released, and then you can slide it out. You can see how that opens up to hold the flex cable in place. And the one right below it just pulls straight off. Now from here we have a shim that we need to remove from behind the LCD assembly. And just keep in mind the direction that that goes in. It's pretty hard to mess it up, but when you go to put it back inside, just take note of how that's situated right here. Go ahead and pull that out. Had to pry this one a little bit. And we'll set that aside for now. Oh, if I can get it out. There we go. Okay, we're going to go ahead and heat up the label on the back. We need to take that off so that we can expose the flex cables. Be very, very careful when you start peeling this thing back, just in case it wants to stick to anything that it's not supposed to. I started down here at the bottom with my pry tool and just kind of got underneath the corner there. There's not too much adhesive, and then you just slowly peel it up, and you see that comes off without too much effort as long as you use a little bit of heat. And now we're going to begin prying underneath this top piece here, which is kind of a funny little the design of this phone is very unusual compared to most of the ones that I've worked on recently. So we're going to heat that up a little bit, and eventually we're going to go ahead and pull all these flex cables out so that we can expose the rear panel, which will slide up and allow you to remove the LCD. And you'll see at the end of the video, I got ahead of myself. This is the first Atrix that I disassembled, so I didn't realize how to pry the back off. So don't go too far ahead, and you might want to watch the end of the video so that you can see how that little metal piece moves upward once you've released another shim that is placed at the top of the phone. You can see I'm being very careful here. There's a little button that comes out there for the power. Set that aside, don't lose it. I believe from here we went ahead and started to remove the camera. And let's see, oh, there is a cable there that we need to disconnect. And I believe that's the speaker, if I remember correctly. So you can see I was really trying to decide how I was going to remove this thing. And I didn't realize at the time that you could remove the LCD panel until I got further into the phone. So I thought that we could disconnect everything from the inside and pull the lens off the front. You actually can, basically, if you're replacing the lens, you can cut the cable and remove the lens from the front. But when you go to reinstall the new one, you cannot feed the flex cable through the hole that's provided here. You literally have to remove the LCD if you want to do this repair properly. And this other little rubber gasket comes off near the charging port, and now we're going to heat up the bottom here and remove these flex cables. And there's not too much adhesive on them, as you can see. In fact, I didn't even heat it up, I don't think, until I got to the part where the camera is, this piece here. Heat that up a little bit, and that'll peel straight off, and you can pull that entire assembly out. Set that aside, and we're going to have to just move that other one out of the way. And from this point, if I had gone inside, there's actually another shim, like I said, at the top. I'm going to go ahead and tape the lens off here. It was cracked pretty bad. Just try to prevent any broken glass from ending up in my hands, and also prevent it from shattering when we start prying on it. Usually the digitizer will hold it in place well enough, but it doesn't hurt to put a little piece of tape on the outside. And you can see I'm heating up around the edges. This is not the correct way to remove this lens until the LCD has been removed as well. But we'll just figure that this time I went ahead and loosened everything up beforehand. And you can just use a shallow pry around the edges. Again, don't do this until you've already removed your LCD. That'll prevent you from doing any damage to it. And if you were trying to preserve the lens, obviously you wouldn't want to do any damage to the flex cable either. So not too bad on this one. Be careful around the bottom. You don't want to pry any of the buttons out on accident. And down in here in the front, you'll see there's an additional shim. This must be removed in order for the panel to slide upwards. See this piece I'm pulling out right now? I'm sorry, that's the rubber gasket for the camera. There's actually one more piece underneath that, if I remember correctly. So you can see the flex cable on the back of this thing is really strange. It bends down and then folds over on itself with a piece of adhesive so that you can plug it in. So this thing just goes in very unusual design, but it does work. And let's see, this is where we actually slide the panel upwards. And if you can see that long plastic piece there just below the camera gasket, that's the piece that had to be removed in order to release the back panel. And from there you can actually pull the LCD out without much difficulty, and then the lens would be removed at that point.